What if the body remembers what the mind has forgotten? What if some of what we carry isn't even ours? Today, I sit with Dr. Sobyl, founder of the Emotional Clearinghouse, whose work explores the invisible patterns that shape our lives. Old emotions, inherited stories, trauma, belief, and the things we hold on after way longer than we think we've moved on. For more than 3 decades, Dr. Sobyl, has listened closely to what lives beneath the surface. The body, the subconscious, the patterns that repeat, and what is asking to be seen, felt, and perhaps released. This conversation is about what we carry, maybe ours, maybe our souls, our ancestors, what we inherit, and what the body knows, but the mind forgets. What might become possible when we finally listen. Dr. Sobyl was a pivotal person on my healing journey. After years, I think 7 or 10 years of carrying this old belief system and imprint of abandonment, which I thought came from my parents' death. It was through Dr. Sobyl, and then later on confirmed through many other people, that she uncovered that I was a vanished twin. In letting go and acknowledging that I had shared my mom's womb with my sister, I was able to let go of years of old patterning and belief systems imprinted in my body of abandonment. And thank you to that, my life expanded and opened in ways that I had long shut down because of this belief system that I had been abandoned. I realized that I was living in my sister's shoes, that I was constantly guilty for being able to live and not her. And a lot of different things in my life actually started making sense. After a session on this very topic, which we go into in depth in this episode, and it's such a beautiful story, so magical, such a remembrance that the world is, the essence of the other side is so felt. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did, and you get to meet one of my favorite people on this planet. Dr. Sobyl is not just creator of a method, but she embodies clearing, expansion, and freedom and joy in the world. I hope you get to know her in this very short episode, but you also go and look at her sessions and her work, because she is such a powerful being. Thank you, Dr. Sobyl, for joining us in this week's episode, and welcome to Here Now Human. All right, welcome. And this is Dr. Sobyl Bunis. I have been so excited to have you on the podcast. This human being has changed my life in more ways than I could ever imagine. And her work, her being, I know that you're going to influence and inform so many people out there of ways and things that they don't even know about yet. So I'm so excited to have you on. She was introduced to me by one of my dear friends, Holly. So thank you, Holly. And welcome, Sobyl. Thank you for being here with us.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. And I have to tell you, I'm very cinematic in my thinking. People say things and I go to a movie. And something you said in the intro made me think of the old movie Auntie Mame, where she says, Auntie Mame will open doors for you, darling, doors you never dreamed existed. Right. And I remember in that movie thinking she was just so expansive and so believing and exposing this nephew that had been given to her to adopt because her brother had passed away. And it was all about how limitless the world is. And she's leading him and she's going to give him everything she has to offer, which is to open doors for him. And, being a chiropractor and being taught from day one that our bodies have the capacity for healing, that all we have to do is remove anything that's blocking us from healing, to me was like an open door. It was like, there's so much possibility for health and wellness and vitality. It was like this big door being opened for me. And so when you said whatever you just said about informing people and opening doors, it just made me think of that moment of how exciting it is when you realize that almost anything's possible if you're open to it, right?
You heard that here first. No, it's beautiful. I do agree. I mean, and I think what you do for people and what you've done for yourself is create limitless possibilities.
Yeah, I think I've always believed that somehow.
Mm.
You looking back, because from my vantage point at this time in my life, looking back, it's so much easier to get a perspective on, as I was growing up, the choices I was making. And you and I were chatting the other day and talking about those early experiences. I didn't have any early experience of natural healing or wellness.
Mhm.
I grew up in a pretty much a medical kind of paradigm. We had a family doctor who was my dad's best friend. He was a pediatrician, and he was this lovely man who cared for me. And he would even come to the house, which was really special. But when he booted me out into the world when I turned 18 and I had to face Western medicine on my own without this loving family friend, I remember saying to doctors, "Well, what is this? Like, this is a rash and you're giving me a cream for it, but what is it? How did it happen? And is there anything I can do to prevent it from happening again?" So I was always curious about the possibility for healing. And when we were talking the other day, and I was reminding myself of something that happened in like sixth grade, where they asked us to write this book report on a subject of our choice. And I ended up doing it on psychic phenomena, which I had
Wow.
zero exposure to that in my life. Nobody in my life was talking about that or interested in that. And I remember reading these studies about these weird psychic phenomena happening in the world. And even at age 11, I remember thinking, yeah, I believe that's possible. So I think I've always had like an expansive mind for possibility. And so it's led to being an explorer on all levels. So
That's so beautiful. What year was that?
let's see.
Yeah.
When I was 10 or 11, I was 1961. I was born in 1950.
Before anyone was really fully talking
Oh,
about it,
yeah,
you
no one
were
was talking about any
ahead
of
of your
this, and
time.
yeah, and then when I moved out after, I went to Cornell, and I graduated in 1972, and I moved to California, and one of the first books I picked up was a book called Seth Speaks,
Hmm.
and it was all about, this woman who was a writer, and she was sitting down to write one night and went apparently into some kind of a trance, and she started doing what they call automatic writing, and it turned out that she was channeling some spiritual being,
Mm.
called Seth. And I read that book and I remember thinking, I was only 22. I didn't really understand much of anything, but I remember thinking, I'm not sure about this idea even of channeling, whether I believe that or not, but damn, this is good information. And it was really a turn on to hear all of this powerful information about universal forces
Mm.
and about how the universe works. And again, it was all about possibility, what we're capable of. And so this idea of limitlessness has, I think, always been with me. And when I found my way to chiropractic school, it was like a real aha coming home moment like, oh, this is a kind of medicine that's looking for the root cause, not just treating a symptom.
Hmm.
And so all those questions of how did I get it and how do I prevent it from happening again, right? This was a profession that's saying, yeah, we're interested in your symptoms, but we want to know what's causing it. How do we treat you at the root of it? Which is how I see everything in the world needs to be treated at the root, not just our health and well being, but every problem we have on this planet.
Right. And through that, you created what you now do, which is going to the root of that, which
Right.
is the emotional clearinghouse. Can you?
Yeah. The emotional clearinghouse. So I think if we look at basic chiropractic philosophy, they call it the triangle of health. And the base of the triangle says structure, and that's the
Mm.
body, the spine, the nervous system. That's how most people think of chiropractors. You adjust the body, you adjust the spine, and you free up energy in the nervous system, and then the body heals itself. Well, on this side of the triangle, it says chemistry,
Mm.
right? Or nutritional. And that has to do with how the organs work and our lifestyle and what we eat and how we utilize it, how we eat and make energy and how we eliminate toxicity. All of those health questions are on the nutritional side of the triangle. But that third side is emotional and spiritual. And when we were in school, the best they could offer us was to say, well, if you have a patient and you think they need help emotionally, send them off to a therapist,
Mm.
right? And that was it. So we had chiropractic here functional medicine, nutrition, lifestyle here. And then this was a big question mark. But I was fortunate enough that in my second year of practice, I was with a group of doctors in Santa Barbara, California. And one of my partners, um, he took the very first seminar ever taught by Dr. Scott Walker in San Diego called NET, Neuro Emotional Technique, right? That was the basis. And he came back from that seminar and said to me and to Peter, the other doctor, he said, pack your bags. We're going to San Diego. This guy has figured out something really, really important. And so the three of us showed up, me with Dr. Yin and Dr. Yang, that's what I used to call them, and me in the middle. We show up front row with Dr. Scott Walker, and he said, I've been a chiropractor for 25 years. I can adjust every bone in the body 20 different ways. I know every nutritional supplement and lifestyle a recommendation I can make for my patients. He said, but there's still some people not getting well. And that was frustrating him, like whatever, 10 or 15% of his patients were not getting well. And it goes back to, again, what's possible. He believed, like he was taught and probably already believed anyway, is that there's a possibility for total healing. So he said, well, I'm doing structure, I'm doing nutrition, it's got to be emotional. And so his genius was that he figured out that emotional trauma is being stored in the nervous system. It's what you and I call, and most people understand as PTSD. We now know what PTSD is, post-traumatic stress disorder, where people have had a trauma, it's left an imprint in their nervous system. And now every time they get into a situation that feels similar to that original trauma, it triggers all those emotions. And that's what leads to people's upsets and addictions and chronic behavior patterns and chronic health issues. So he figured that out and was able to create a technique that used energy medicine called applied kinesiology to muscle test the body, muscle test the nervous system, and determine where in the body that trauma was stored and then how to release it. It was miraculous. And he was really the first one to do it. Now, since then, there are a lot of other techniques, emotional freedom technique, et cetera. Lots of others have come along, but he really was one of the very first to figure out that the body is carrying these deep imprints and that they can get triggered. Everybody now knows what it means to be triggered, right? And it was miraculous. And we came back from that seminar and started to apply that work in a practice that already had adjusting, already had nutrition and supplements. And it was amazing to see, that's the missing piece. So.
Well, and we'll go in deeper into the different layers of it.
Okay.
I'd like to start by sharing a bit of the story one of the stories that we had together.
Good.
Why I say Sobyl has changed my life is because I was working on, as you all know from the first episode, both of my parents passed, and I was working on the abandonment piece that just was not going away. And I had been working on it for 15 years through many different techniques, many different methodologies.
Right.
And then I came to you, and one of the first things you said was that, do you want to share a little bit about the vanished twin?
Oh, about the vanished twin.
Yeah.
Okay, so no matter what somebody comes in for, whatever their issue is, we use something called muscle testing. And it's a way of using what's called kinesiology to find where in the body there is a block that is locked into the nervous system, right? So something has happened in your life that was emotionally painful or traumatic. And in that moment, the body imprints it into the nervous system. It stores it in the nervous system. Our body literally stores the memory of trauma in our nervous systems, right? And the reason it does that is to protect us for the future. So if something down the road happens in your life that is similar to that original trauma, it wakes up all those emotions. It's like a warning system. It's like how the immune system, when it fights the bacteria, once it's completed the fight, it then creates a little memo in the immune system's memory bank that says, hey, if that bad boy ever comes back, we know exactly the structure of it, and we've got antibodies ready to fight it. So it's a memory that's stored there that gets triggered the next time that bacteria shows up, right? For a good reason. Well, emotionally, it's the same thing. It's like a warning system. Something bad's happening, beware. But those triggers as much as they're warning us, are also limiting us because they're keeping us stuck in old painful patterns. So, for example, let me tell the story first, and then we'll go into vanished twin. I think
Yes.
people will understand. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
Please.
so this is classic. So one of my patients came to me with her grandson. He was 11 months old. He had his hand burned on a wall heater. His mom heard the phone ring. She turned around. You know how it is with moms. They pick up the phone and the little kid gets into trouble right away. So literally, she picks up the phone. He puts his hand on the wall heater, burns his hand, and starts screaming. Right away, she calls 911. The ambulance comes. They take this kid out to the ambulance and off to the hospital, and then they bring him home. And the burn was not that bad. But from that moment on, every time they went to lay him in the crib at night, he would scream bloody murder. And this went on for weeks. And the grandmother had heard about me, and she said, let me bring him in to her and see if we can figure this out. So she brings in this little 11-month-old child. Now, I couldn't directly test him because he wasn't old enough to do muscle testing. So she held him, and I muscle tested the baby through her. It's called surrogate testing. And we were able to figure out where the trauma occurred because something had happened to upset this child, and he couldn't be put down in the crib at night without screaming all night. So it turned out the burn was not the trauma. The mom calling 911 and freaking out was not the trauma. Being taken out to the ambulance was not the trauma. But when they laid him down in the ambulance and he had these two huge paramedics standing over him, that was traumatic for him. So the reason I tell this story is that you never know how trauma is perceived, what is perceived as traumatic for an individual. So for that little 11-month-old child, those two tall strangers standing over him while he was on his back in a vulnerable position was traumatic. So when they bring him home from the hospital, what would they do? They'd lay him in the crib on his back, and he was reliving that trauma. So we were able to figure out which emotion it was, clear it from his nervous system using a gentle adjusting technique, and literally that night, he went to sleep, and it never occurred again, that wakefulness all night.
Wow.
So that's how the body stores trauma, right?
Right.
So then when people come to me, I never know where we're going to find what's at the root of their issue. So for you, it was about abandonment, and it had to do seemingly with your parents dying, but probably all of the work you did focused on that as the source. And what you and I discovered through the muscle testing was that when you were in utero, and this is something more common than people understand, that many pregnancies begin as twins. And within the first month, one of those twins dies, and that tissue is either reabsorbed by the mother's body, or it's expelled through some kind of a discharge, or the surviving twin absorbs the twin that has died. And then way down the road, you see people with extra kidneys or extra body parts that turned out to be twin tissue, right? This is very well documented. This is as scientific as it gets. Please, to your listeners, look up vanished twin syndrome. You will see probably hundreds of thousands of things to look at. But what they haven't looked at, besides the physical aspect of a lost vanished twin, is the impact that loss has on the surviving twin. So in your case, that was the situation, that you had a vanished twin, and in the loss of that twin, that was your original abandonment, was being abandoned by the twin, not by your parents. Although fast forward to your parents dying, that feeling of abandonment is sitting on top of this earlier one. So with emotional clearing work, we're always trying to find what is the earliest, deepest, most original root of an issue. And we do the clearing on that rather than on something that's you think is the cause. And that's why so many people spend years and years in therapy and other modalities, and they can say, oh, well, I have this issue because this happened, or I have this issue because that happened, but nothing changes.
Yeah.
And then you come for a technique like this, and we get to that root, and we get literally into the nervous system and clear it. It's like technique is the equivalent of going into your computer and finding a file that's old and deleting it, saying that file is gunking up the works here. My computer keeps referring back to that file, but it's no longer appropriate. Let's get rid of it. And once it's gone, then it's no longer there to be triggered.
Right.
So when people have these seemingly miraculous changes and transformations, it's because the real root trauma is now gone from the nervous system and it can no longer get triggered.
Hmm.
So that's the story of the vanished twin, and many more people have it than you would imagine.
Which would go back to ancestral, and we'll go there in just one moment. I
Right.
just have to share that when you and I had that session, I was for some reason in my car. And then I leave the car and I'm walking into a hotel for dinner in California somewhere. And I look straight at me, and this woman walks towards me with the dress that I had gotten in the middle of nowhere in Mexico. Same dress, same hair, same everything. We even
Everything.
have a photo to prove it. And it was like, wait, hold on. I couldn't believe my eyes because it was so close to, like, she looked like my twin. And we had just done that session.
Right.
And I walk away and then I run back into her. And I was like, okay, I got to tell you this. I just found out I had a twin. And she goes to me, oh, I'm a twin.
Exactly.
And she was wearing exactly like everything. So it was confirmation
Yeah.
from the universe that what we had done was that powerful. And
Yeah.
I have to share that after that session, everything changed for me. I mean,
Mhm.
I used to remember that I was so afraid of my brother dying or somebody, all these people are close to me dying. And then we cleared that and it was like complete freedom, like
Right.
in my relationships, in my romantic relationships, and all my levels. So yes, I just cannot recommend enough to
I
clear
remember
that.
when you called me, and I remember when you sent me that picture, and I looked at it, and I thought, okay, I've been doing this for almost 40 years, but I have never seen any situation that was so confirming. I mean, the dress was so unusual, first of all. It was a very unusual. It was not like you see it everywhere. And there she was in this identical dress and the shoes and the hair and the look. You looked like twins.
And I remember you sharing that when you have a vanished twin, you buy things twice all the time. Well, I had bought that dress twice, but she wasn't wearing that second dress I bought. So it's like I do that all the time. I not anymore, but not as much. I still do a little bit. But I used to get things twice all the time. And then my reasoning was, so in case one gets ruined, I have another one and I would never use the other one.
Yeah,
So,
the vanished twin is so fascinating because it's literally a trauma that precedes your birth.
Mm.
And so you're literally coming into this world having experienced this profound loss. And very often what happens, and the reason the muscle testing is so powerful, is that we can actually determine what are the emotions that occurred for you in utero as a result of the loss of that twin. It could be a feeling of abandonment. It could be feeling vulnerable. It could be dread, like dread of coming into the world alone. But the other really powerful thing that comes out of that kind of a loss is what we call negative or limiting beliefs. So, and this is a huge part of this work that I do. And when something happens, it's really painful and threatening on some deep level, and it could be threatening physically, emotionally, spiritually. The being has to somehow come to some kind of conclusion about it that helps explain it. Like, this is a classic one. You've got a child whose parents are always saying, I'm coming to your game, I'll be at your show. Don't you worry, I'll be there. I'll come pick you up after school. And then they don't show. And so this child, by the age of 6 or 7 or 8, which is when children become self-aware and able to say, this is me and this is the world, that's when a lot of these mistaken beliefs lock into place. But for someone who's had their trauma in utero, it starts there. But here we've got this 7-year-old child who's had the parents say, I promise, I promise, I promise. And they come to the conclusion, oh, people never keep their promises. Now, that is a negative belief. But as you go through life with a negative, mistaken, limiting belief, you start to see it everywhere. It's like when I bought my first green Subaru. All of a sudden, there's thousands of green Subarus everywhere. So when you have a negative belief, it's like you're wearing a pair of glasses. Instead of rose-colored, they're colored by this belief. So every time someone breaks a promise, it strengthens that belief. The other downside is that you can't even see that there are hundreds or maybe thousands of times when people have kept their promises. And so it limits you so profoundly. So when we find and we clear a negative belief and we delete it from the nervous system, so many things open up for people. And I say to patients after they've cleared a negative belief, I say, all right, now you have to start to look for the world to show you that you're no longer carrying this belief. In other words, you're going to start to see, oh, there's all these promises being kept. Or, oh, I'm not really abandoned at all. I have relationships everywhere. But the mistaken belief that begins for an in utero baby that hasn't been born yet, it means you come into the world already with that pair of glasses on. And for some people who have vanished twin, they come in believing I'm alone in the world and nothing they do makes them feel connected. Or they come into the world believing that the world is a dangerous place. Right.
Or the guilt of survival and not, right? That was mine.
Right.
I survived. My twin didn't.
So they may be running around saying, oh, I'm so undeserving. I don't deserve. I'm not worthy. What do people say? I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. That's the one. That's like the catchphrase.
Overcompensating, wanting, to just.
Right. Yeah. But it has to do with this deep original trauma that took place that created this reaction and this negative belief that they literally come into the world with. It's amazing to see. And I've discovered in all these years of practice that sometimes when people come into this world with a trauma already lodged in their nervous system, sometimes it manifests right away. Like the parents will say, oh, you were always like this. This is how you've always believed and what you've always done. But sometimes it doesn't show up until later in life, maybe in early adulthood. And then an event takes place, it triggers that trauma, and now you've got it. But when you take a history with a new patient, new client, and they say, this wasn't always an issue for me. The first 20 years of my life were pretty cool, pretty easy, pretty relaxed. But then something happened. Well, what happened? Was it a breakup? Was it a disappointment? Was it some kind of a trauma that woke up that stored trauma from in utero? And now they're starting to experience all these limitations in their life. And that's a really powerful way to work with people too, is to find out what happened. Right. What is the point that woke it up?
And the many layers also, because we were talking about the ancestral piece, right? So it could be like that came from utero and, all the things, actually, before we go to the ancestors, the utero, like we have talked about how like the utero can affect the baby, not just the vanished twin, but the energy of the mother.
Right.
Right. How important that is to clear as well.
Right. Exactly. So when I use the muscle testing to find out when I'm trying to get to the root, and let's say one of the things we do with the muscle testing is we look for the age of the original event. So let's say you've come in for an issue and we found out, oh, you're carrying a feeling of dread. And then I'm asking the body through the muscle testing, oh, is this a current feeling of dread, or is this a feeling of dread that's anchored in your past somewhere? And if it is anchored in your past, we know it has an older root. So then we can say, did that feeling of dread lock into your nervous system between the ages of conception and 10 or 10 to 20? And the muscle testing literally will help us hone in on the exact age, right?
Right.
So once...
And 0 to 1, right? So it's even so before conception.
Well, we used to start from from birth to age 10. But then one of the doctors that I studied with kept testing someone and couldn't find anything. And knew she was right, knew there was something there. And finally she said, oh, is it in utero? And that's when the muscle testing revealed it. And once she was in utero, she didn't know what to do. So she started asking questions. And when she said, oh, is there a possibility of a twin that died? And that's when she discovered it. And then she came to a seminar and shared that with all of us. But the other thing that happens in utero, and I test for, if it's not a vanished twin, then very likely it's the mother's emotional state that's had an impact on the child. It could be what's going on between the parents. So sometimes the father's emotional state will affect the child, but the mother's almost always is the primary one because she's so completely intimately linked physically, chemically, emotionally, spiritually. And so we always ask, is this a sensitivity to the mother's emotion? And then we clear that from the nervous system. But the other big one that comes up is when a mother has decided to give her child up for adoption. And that one is huge. I've just been working with someone this week where we thought we had done all of the clearing work on her adoption and it showed up again. So it shows up in layers, as you were saying. Sometimes it shows up in layers. And we were able to determine that at that very moment when the mother decided to give up her child, it left an imprint that had affected her whole life in a very particular way. We were tracing back to something and we were able to clear it. It's just so powerful to have the tool of muscle testing to be able to really, with a fine tooth comb, almost like a scalpel, to really separate out what's the exact emotion, the exact original time and place that this event occurred so that we can clear it at its root.
Wow, it's beautiful and powerful. What would you say adoption? So you were talking about adoption and the soul contract between mother and child.
Right.
And what
Right.
happens there for the child?
Well, I think I think everybody's spiritual and religious beliefs are very different. When I am doing muscle testing with people and we find something I will ask, is this on the level of the soul? Is this a wounded soul? And I will ask my client or my patient, I'll say, how do you feel about the existence of the soul? And 99% of them believe there's a soul that exists beyond death. So once I know that, then I feel comfortable asking to see if this trauma is imprinted at the soul level. Now, when you're dealing with a relationship, a mother and a child, we may never understand the full depth of what that soul connection is, right? It's maybe beyond us. I mean, I think we do our best to understand what we can understand, but I think the universe is so much more complex than we're capable of really fully understanding. So we're operating at whatever percent is 10% of understanding, and we're doing great.
We're doing great.
We're doing great. We're getting some pretty powerful healing going on, which is wonderful. But I think it's humbling, and I think it's essential to recognize we can only know so much. And I think ultimately, I just kind of guide my patients to understand what's meaningful for them, and how do you move forward from here. So a lot of time, my clients and I are putting together some kind of a process or a ritual that they can do once we've done the clearing to help really get it out of their system and to help them open up to a positive, healed version of that, right?
Yes.
So that's a really exciting part of the work too, is to go after the clearing to really create something that will give you a positive way of being in the world that represents this trauma has been healed.
Almost like an imprint or a footprint, like an actual footprint.
Exactly.
Of the emotional.
So sometimes traumas will create behavior patterns, like, for example, always ending up with the same, what we call self-sabotage. Like you're going along in your life and everything's going great, and all of a sudden you do something that crashes you back down to zero. And there I go, I sabotaged myself again, which is what people say. But nobody wakes up in the morning. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I think this is a good day to sabotage myself. But that's effectively what happens, because people they go along a path and they get close to something that it represents a healed trauma, and they get triggered and they go crashing back to square one. But it's all unconscious. It's all happening on a deep unconscious level. It's not purposeful. So when people get into blaming themselves and, oh, I'm such a, I'm a loser, or I'm sabotaging myself, or I don't deserve. They get into all this language. I go, no, that's not true. Once we get the clearing done, what we want to do is recognize that behavior pattern that's chronic has created pathways in the nervous system, what we call neural pathways. It's like you've taken that path over and over again. And so the nervous system is designed to keep making that same mistake. Well, the only way to let go of a neural pathway is to stop using it.
Right.
Well, how can you stop using it if everything in you says keep going that way? So we have to do the clearing, get the imprint out of the nervous system, and then step over here and say, okay, how do we now create a positive association, a positive way of being? We have to be creative here in order to let that dissolve by lack of use. So we find what we need to clear. We clear it using a very gentle system of breathing and holding points in the body, which we haven't even spoken about. And then we take the time to create something that's really going to take you into the future.
Right.
And plus, sometimes just clearing the trauma, all of a sudden things start happening, like you connected with twin, or you no longer felt that way about your brother, or people who are fighting all the time with the same argument. They call me and they go, oh, we haven't had that argument, and we don't have that argument anymore because the triggers are gone.
Right.
So,
So we'll go to the next layer, which is the
Okay.
ancestry piece that you've been working on for the last
Yeah.
couple months,
Yeah.
years.
So is there anything in particular you want me to talk about? Just the whole idea of ancestral trauma?
Yeah, well, that and also how, because I think you and I both agree how like everybody that's, we're a lot, all of us are moving from the ancestral
Right.
energy,
Right.
or how like patterns and thoughts and ideas are not just ours, but are also coming
Right.
ancestrally
Right.
as well. So,
Exactly. So let's look at it in a couple of different ways. Let's look at ancestry and let's look at family patterns let's distinguish them out a little bit. Okay. So if we go far back enough in our ancestry, all of us come from the same roots. And all of us at one point were tribal or nomadic or just trying to survive and looking for food, looking for shelter, looking to protect ourselves from the natural elements, looking to protect ourselves from enemies. So we all carry some of that. So let's say I'm working with someone on weight issues, which I do a lot. Um, and we've gotten down to the final bits of the issues that are around issues with weight and with compulsive eating, emotional eating, et cetera. And there's something that just won't let go. Very often, it's a feeling that is so old and so ancient that's still stuck in the nervous system that is what we call an ancestral trauma. So they may be carrying the remnants of a feeling of starvation that their ancestors way, way back in time experienced because every day was survival. Every day was all about survival before we became civilized and started growing food, right? So it may be that that final piece of clearing for someone is that ancestral piece, meaning that we're recognizing that way, way back where we all came from, we all experienced on a day-to-day basis the feeling of being in constant survival, right? So there's that. Then if we look at
parentheses though, I would say still to this day we're in survival. Not long ago did I just let go of survival, but we can go there later. Keep going.
right,
But
right.
yes, I will.
I agree. I
Yes.
absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And then if we look at family patterns, it's similar. In other words, if you look at addictions, how it seems that, oh, my grandfather was an alcoholic, my great grandfather was an alcoholic, or abuse. Like you can see, oh, this one abused, this one abused, this one abused, this one. You can watch it coming down through the generations. And some of that has to do with how trauma that goes back generations that we might even be able to trace, how it changes the DNA, which is what the research is saying, that the DNA has changed. And now certain behavior patterns will come down through the generations. They'll manifest in the generations to come. So they've looked at Holocaust survivors and the children of Holocaust survivors and some of the physiological changes those Holocaust survivors carry in their bodies that are a result of what their parents experienced. They have issues that are related to their parents' trauma. So, this idea that trauma can be passed on through the generations is real and it's getting a lot of scientific background now. So, I didn't know about it until, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. I was working with a client of mine, and I won't, I can't reveal the whole story because it's a very private story, but she had experienced a lot of abuse in childhood, and we were doing all this work, and she was getting better and better and better, but then we kept hitting a block. And one day she said to me, I think I carry ancestral trauma. Will you muscle test for that? Well, the muscle test, again, I'm just going to show a quick idea of what a muscle test is. You take a strong muscle in the body where you push against it, like the doctor pushes against it, and you resist. And then you touch different points in the body, different energy points. Let's say I touch this point, and now the strong muscle goes weak. It tells me that in this meridian, what they call the nervous system or the meridian system in the body, there's a blockage here, right? So strong, you touch something and it goes weak. So when we started to test her body for ancestral trauma, it kept going weak. So we started exploring. And it turned out that her trauma did have very old ancestral links. And when we started exploring it and doing clearing on it, she had major expansive healing going on from that. So that was the first time that I had ever even explored it. This was about 20 years ago. But I would say in the last 10 years, I've been getting a lot of support and guidance for exploring more and more about ancestral trauma and soul level trauma. And personally, I think if we look at the world stage and what's going on globally with people, I think we're seeing a lot of cultural and ancestral trauma being played out on the world stage.
Right.
It's war after war, it's conflict after conflict. It's people not healing their relationships
Mm.
and continuing to behave in really destructive ways. So I really am hoping that in bringing my work into a global arena, that I can find ways to work with cultures. And I know we've talked about this before, that we need cultural healing so that we're no longer, number one, afraid and rejecting each other and being horrible to each other, but that we actually discover our mutual roots and our mutual human connection and our love for each other rather than our fear of each other.
Mm.
And I think that's ancestral and cultural and family generational. I think it's all of those things. So
Because we were talking also a bit earlier, as we got to recognize the fear. You were saying the fear in people right now as we're
right,
talking in the world,
right.
and really see from where that is coming from. And yeah,
Well, I think historically people have always been afraid of what they don't understand,
Mm.
right? What you don't understand, the stranger, the strange custom feels threatening unless you take the time to get to know. If you think about um, different places in the world where there's horrible conflict right now, there have been times in history where those two peoples lived side by side, right? And got along beautifully and understood each other's cultures. But then we have these powers that be above that experience that have a vested interest in keeping people separate.
Mm.
There really are forces in the world that don't want to see people get past their differences. And, that's a hard thing to accept, but it's there. I mean, the love of power and the love of control is a real, it's a block to healing.
Mm.
And I think people, when they take the time to get past their differences and get to know each other, they find out just how much they have in common. But I think fear comes from, some of it is tribal. Some of it goes back into tribal conflict. Some of it goes back into childhood conflict, where you have a parent or a grandparent who had trauma, let's say, in the country they came from. And they come to this country and they want you to be afraid too because they were persecuted.
Mm.
So they try to pass on and project that fear onto the next generation. Ooh, you shouldn't be friends with that person because in the old country, before I came here, that person persecuted me. That culture persecuted me. So some of it is that. Some of it is carried down through family tradition. Like, this is who we are. We don't trust those people. We hate those people. Threat.
Death.
Yeah.
But probably back to tribal death of the tribe. And if the tribe dies, then, we're
All is lost.
all is lost.
All is lost. Right.
So it's keeping it close for so.
Right. It feels safer
Right.
to be with what's familiar. But I think we can get past that.
Yeah.
We have to get
We
past
have
that.
to get past
And
that.
unfortunately, when we look at the media, we see all the conflict. But what we don't see is that the deeper grassroots layer, there's so much healing going on.
Right.
There's so much connection going on. People are discovering. Like, I look in my neighborhood where I live now. I'd probably say 90% of the people on my street vote differently than I do. But we don't deal with each other on that level. We take care of each other. We watch out for each other. And being a chiropractor, of course, he fixes my roof and I adjust his wife. And, that's how it goes. We just watch out for each other. And there's so much love there and appreciation.
Right.
And it's outside of the political arena. But the political arena is a real problem for us because they really they've lost their ability to come together and really solve problems. They used to. I'm old enough to remember when, no matter what the blah, blah, blah was out in public, eventually they got behind closed doors and figured it out. But that's not happening so much anymore. So I think it's on us, right?
Right.
As individuals, our own healing, and then it goes out from us. So I heal myself, which helps me heal my relationship with you, as a being, as a friend, culturally. I get to understand more about, who you are and what you believe. And as long as we can be okay with who we are and ourselves, then it's not threatening what somebody else thinks or believes.
I find it too that as long as you're not creating harm in any way, right? If it, like creating harm, you're accepting, you're accepting, like I don't know if it's the judgment or like as long as there's no harm being made and there's space for both sides
Right.
and there's space for all four sides or whatever, as long as there's space for faith of source, and I don't mean religiously, I mean
Right.
like whatever it is that we believe in, without harming one another, there could be a potential bridge of humanity somehow.
Right.
That's what we're here for, to experience that in the planet.
I am in such agreement with that. And
Yeah.
I also think there's that, which
Mhm.
is a deep truth. And I think we're capable of that. And I think at the core of who we are, we're capable of that. But there's so many layers of pain. And that's my job, is to remove all those layers of
Yeah.
pain so that we can be at that core and we can, in a beautiful way, really appreciate each other. Um, I also think we all need to be able to hold very different ideas that are conflicting in our minds concurrently.
Yes.
To be able to say, I get that this is true, but I also get that this is true. And they seem to conflict with each other. Like, we don't have to be all or nothing.
Right.
We really don't,
Yeah. I
we
agree.
really don't. Like, for example, cancel culture is all about that. It's like,
Mhm.
boom, done. Well, I can look at an artist who has been accused of something, and I can still appreciate their art. So I can hold in my mind that this person might not be a good person, may or may not have done what they've been accused of, but I can also appreciate that they've created this brilliant art,
Mm.
right?
Right.
And I can go back into the 70s and even earlier in the 80s and watch movies that aren't as evolved as we are now and still appreciate that. I don't have to kick that out of my life just because we've evolved to this point. And I think that's unfortunately where we've gotten in our culture, is that we've
Separated.
separated so much. We can't handle that.
But I think that's also about seeing the person as a whole, right? It's like we all make mistakes. We're all human.
Right.
And also, we all come from a background where the pain or the upbringing wasn't necessarily the brightest and the most healthy.
Right.
And so we have to also look at where that person is acting from,
Right.
and I think that's brilliantly what you do. And I think I move in the world in that way, where I can really look at the person based on who they are completely versus who they're portraying themselves to be too.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's a brilliant way to kind of look past it all.
Right. And to
Yeah.
have compassion.
Yeah.
One of the favorite things I love doing is working, and I do a lot of this and more of this than ever in my practice. I work with whole families.
Mm.
So years ago, I started looking at these families where I was literally doing emotional clearing on 4 generations at the same time. Great grandma who came over from Russia, who got her family out to Argentina, her daughter, their daughter and son, and the grandchildren. I got to work with all of them, and I went, will you look at that? Great grandma has the pattern, mom has the pattern, daughter has the pattern, and the children have the pattern. So I started to see this generational rolling downhill of the negative patterns. And I think when I work with whole families, as sometimes I'll work with them all in the room at the same time. Oh my God, the level of compassion that you see a child have for their mother. Oh, I had no idea you went through that.
Mm.
I had no idea you experienced such pain. You see their hearts open up and their minds open up. And a relationship where the parents and children may be at odds with each other shifts out of that compassion, what you're talking about, that
Mhm.
ability to see and understand and have a heart for what people have been through. So that's really a precious thing to see.
Yeah.
Because, I always tell, I don't have children of my own, but I've got hundreds of children. I'm one of those women, the community mommy, which I love the role. And everybody needs another mother anyway. One that doesn't react to them.
I
One
have
that goes,
lots of
yes, yes.
I've adopted a lot of those. Yes.
As opposed to, you did what?
Yeah.
Because you're not their mother. So you
Right.
can just be calm. But you can just see how, as a parent, there's no way around this, you have to raise your children in a world that you didn't grow up in.
Mm.
And so there is no way you can ever fully understand what your child is going through, because they're living in a world that is completely distinct from the world you grew up in. So it's a
Right.
it's a rough road no matter what. But doing emotional clearing with whole family systems, which I want to do more and more of, and I'd love to do more globally,
Mm.
is be able to access whole family systems. That's where I think real transformation takes place. Because number one, we clear the trauma out of the nervous system. People start behaving differently towards each other, and that has that ripple effect. Now this
Right.
family is a healed family, and how they behave with their neighbors, how they behave in their community. They come from their good heart, from
Mm.
their best selves, rather than from, reacting out of fear or reacting out of, oh, this one thinks differently than I do. I
Right.
can't possibly be friends with this person.
The cultural wound, right? They're the difference between my family, your family, in a different environment.
And then there's I love talking about culture, because
Mm.
there's the culture of being a woman, the
Mm.
culture of being a man, the culture of being a child, the culture of being, an employer. Um, I watch a lot of TV dramas. I love watching the period pieces like Downton Abbey or The
Mm.
Gilded, all of these things that took place hundreds of years ago. And I used to think, why am I doing all this? Am I wasting time? And then I realized, no, I'm doing my homework,
Mm.
because a lot of these generational issues, like let's say a woman comes to me and says, I have a terrible time making decisions. Okay, well, let's figure out why. Like they're
Mm.
paralyzed by having to make decisions, not just, oh, I can't choose this t shirt or that t shirt, but really paralyzed by not being able to make decisions. So it turns out that for some of those women, when we do the muscle testing, we might find that, oh, at age 6 or age 7, they experienced, when they were becoming self aware, their parents were always saying to them, oh, you don't really want that.
Mm.
You don't really mean that. You don't really believe that. In other words, they're having every decision they're
Shut off.
making about what they want or believe being shut down.
Mhm.
So we can clear that trauma. But if we go back generations, for hundreds of years, women have not been allowed to make decisions for their own lives. Women have been property, And so it's only in the last, 100 something years that we've had the vote. So if you don't clear the cultural trauma, then this woman might still be stuck with paralyzed, just inability to make
Mm.
decisions. So I think the culture of being a woman, especially historically, shows up, in modern women as an issue that they're trying to work on. They've been everywhere, they've tried everything, and it's still there, it's still locked. So you want to find out the root cause from their lifetime, but also acknowledge that either on the ancestral level or a family generational level or a cultural level, they're also carrying the remnants or the residue of those patterns, and we can clear those.
Or a soul level of past life. We've done those too. It's
Yes.
the many layers of the soul in a human experience.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think the soul level stuff is so fascinating.
Yeah.
Because whether you believe in a past life or not, I say to people, it doesn't matter if you believe in past life or not. I don't care. But if you believe the soul exists and that it exists past the body dying, then it's having some kind of an experience. It's carrying some kind of energy. And once they're open to that, then we can really look at the soul level patterns and do clearing on that as well. And those are so powerful and so pervasive, because you literally come into this world with these experiences, and then it informs who you choose to marry and the work you choose, and all these different things are a result of those soul wounds. And I believe we're here at this time in our lives to work things out, to do this deep healing work, and to find
Mm.
out, who are we? What is the best we can be? What is our potential?
Yeah.
What is the most healed and expansive, fulfilled human being we can be? And to be that, you have to kind of look at all those different levels. So for me, it's a never ending story. People,
Right.
when people say, oh, does this work ever done? And I said, well, I hope not. I don't want to stop now.
Yeah.
It keeps getting better.
Mm.
And I look back at who I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and I think, wow, I'm not that person anymore. I mean, certain core things are true, but so many of those patterns have just dropped away.
Yes.
And
And I see that happening collectively. I was just telling some friends not long ago, yesterday. Collectively, I feel like we're going from like doing to like
Right.
really becoming comfortable with being and
Yes.
not needing to be anybody, not needing. I feel like that's probably some part of Age of Aquarius, like where we're really collectively starting to collaborate a lot more.
I
Even though
agree.
the powers are, still working for power and ego, but humanity, I sense we're really coming together to create change.
Which is why you and I are here today.
That's right. After 5 years.
What's interesting is most people my age are
Yeah.
retired.
Right.
And I have many friends who are retired, and I have many who are not. But I thought to myself, retire? I just finally figured some stuff out, right? I got 40 years under my belt almost, knock on wood, keep going, of this work. And I see the world in such a state. And I thought, oh, there's got to be a way for me to bring this work to the world in a format that makes it more affordable, more accessible, easy for people to get to, and very healing. And so that's when Emotional Clearinghouse came about during COVID, because I couldn't travel and do it. And then once COVID cleared, I started looking around at all these fabulous women that I know who are doing amazing work in the world. And I thought, oh, what if we collaborate? What if we take your work and my work and we blend it? I have 2 other women friends that I'm doing this with. The first one was just at Rancho La Puerta in Mexico. It is so powerful to take these beautiful bodies of wisdom, and especially because you and I are from different generations.
I was just thinking that.
Right.
Yep.
And I think, at this age, we're supposed to be giving whatever wisdom we have, passing it on, and getting the wisdom from the younger generation too. It's an
Give and
exchange.
take.
It's a beautiful exchange. And because I didn't grow up in your world, I want to collaborate with you to understand what your generation has experienced. Like every generation has gone through their own traumas. Like growing up, what was the biggest trauma you think your generation experienced?
Oof, there's been a couple. I mean, currently there's one, but I think the shift of technology. I don't know, that's a trauma of disconnection, I believe.
Right.
So I think that us growing up in this age where we didn't have technology and now we have all this technology, and I think my generation's trying to figure out how to. I think my generation is still a bit more connected than the one after us.
Right.
But I feel like that's a big experience.
Right. And then we look at big world events, big world changing events.
Right.
So for my generation, it was Kennedy. It was Kennedy being shot.
Yeah. Right.
I can tell you exactly where I was standing. I was standing exactly ready to go into social studies with Mrs. Chard. And somebody said President Kennedy was shot. It was right after I'd had my bat mitzvah. So I had that so locked into my memory.
Right.
And then kids who saw the space shuttle blow up when they were little kids in school. The threat of nuclear war. When we were kids, we did these duck and cover drills where you had to get under the desk as if a desk was going to save you from a nuclear bomb. I used to walk home from those terrified.
Yeah, okay.
Terrified. And then there's
the current wars right now in the Middle East, and it's not it doesn't hit in our homes, but I think it's creating a lot of
September 11th, when that happened, depending on what age you were, the first gun shooting, the Columbine school shooting, all
and the continuous gun shootings also currently to this day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's no shortage of traumas, but to understand for each generation, I would love to do that work to collaborate with people from different generations and different cultural groups and say, what are the traumas that your group is experiencing? Enlighten me, educate me about what your issues are, your group, your generation, and let me help design an emotional clearing program that we can do together. It's like I'd open that door so that I can understand your world and design something that's specific for you.
Do you think it's possible to get 2 very different cultures in one room to do this work together?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Oh, absolutely.
Because I sense, I was just thinking this going to bed yesterday. How is it that we're really kind of shunning an entire culture for something a leader is doing, So because people are very different than the leadership in the country.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, again, if we put these 2 cultures together and do this work and clear this work and really look at like most of this comes from a leadership decision, how can we also clear that for cultures moving forward as well?
I agree. Yeah. I agree. And, there's a very basic thing that all of us can do, but it isn't easy. And that's to get together with people you disagree with
Mm.
and have conversations.
Yeah, I agree.
And I do that all the time.
Yes.
And I think the reason I'm capable of doing that, I'm not, I'm just saying, I've had a lot of this emotional healing work myself.
Mm.
I haven't been just doing this, I've been getting it done because as a practitioner, as a doctor, you can't help your patients in areas that you haven't
Clear.
been willing to face yourself.
Agree.
That's a deep truth.
Yeah.
So any of the doctors who are out there doing emotional healing work, I say, good for you, but you have to do that work yourself in order to be there for your patients, to be able to hear what their issue is,
Right.
And so, I like to find out from people, okay, so I know you voted for this one rather than that one. Talk to me about what is the policy that you love that's so meaningful in your life that you voted that way? And they'll share it as long as you can sit in non-judgment.
Right.
Now, I'm pretty good at sitting in non-judgment now,
Mhm.
but I wasn't always. And so when I look at my friends, oh my God, it's an extreme range of people. This one over here compared to this one over here. And then the bulk of them are in the middle, a little to the right, a little to the left. But they're all people I love. They're all people I care about. And many of them, we have vastly different points of view, but we love each other
Mm.
and we watch out for each other.
But it goes back to also how that trauma hit the
Right.
family
Right.
and the grandparents and the great grandparents, because those beliefs come from a way that family was probably hit in some form, right? And so I
Right.
think that's why the work that you do is so brilliant, because those beliefs and that who they vote for doesn't come from necessarily an actual belief of themselves. I believe it actually comes from how they were raised.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so when it comes to beliefs, maybe we can share this just to give your listeners
Mhm.
something they can do on their own, is to look and see where in their lives they feel limited, where they feel they're up against some kind of a belief system that they can't seem to get past, like, I'm not good enough, or the world is a dangerous place, or people can't be trusted, or people never change. All of these sort of hardline belief systems that they carry. And take the time to really sit with it and ask yourself the question, where does this belief come from?
Mm.
Am I hearing my uncle or my grandmother say, don't trust people. They never they never change. You can't trust people, or money is the root of all evil, or whatever. I mean, some of these beliefs come from on high. They come from a relative. They come from our spiritual leaders, our religious belief systems. If it comes from someone else, those are the easiest ones to get rid of, because you can make a choice. You can ask yourself, is this really a match for who I want to be in the world? Do I really want to live my life out of that belief? Or would I really like to be free of that belief? In other words, what my grandmother's experience was isn't my experience. And maybe you go through some kind of a ritual for yourself where you set up an altar and speak to your ancestors and say, okay, gang, great great grandmother back there, your belief system was true for you then because of the world you lived in. But I don't have those circumstances.
Right.
I have these opportunities and this potential. So I am going to respectfully cut the ties between your belief and my life. You can do that in a ritual. You can, there's all sorts of ways to do rituals. But the ones that you source back to and you say, no, it really belongs to your own trauma. Like you had some kind, like, for example, the example we used earlier, people don't keep promises. Well, you can clear that one too. You might need the help of someone like me or some other practitioner or some other technique to clear that belief. But once you clear it or decide that you really don't want to live that way anymore, then you can start to choose to ask yourself the question, what if I spent all day and did nothing but look for proof of, evidence of people keeping their promises? You can do that. And you can start to tip the scales and let that old neural pathway dissolve. So there's a lot of ways that people can do healing for themselves, but there has to be a willingness and a consciousness and an intention. And sometimes you need whatever, a workshop, a seminar, a book, a practitioner. I'm not saying it can always be done alone. Certainly I didn't do it on my own.
Yeah.
So
I'm hearing is it the Course of Miracles that says fear or love? Like, do you choose fear or love? I believe it's the Course of Miracles.
I went to a few of those meetings in Santa Barbara back when Marianne Williamson was there.
Yeah.
in the Unity Church years ago. Yeah. Course in Miracles is one of those great programs.
But I believe like in the first few pages, all I read was like it's either, I believe it's that book. I don't know if I'm getting confused, but it's like you either choose to live in fear or to live in love.
Right.
Basically, that's what I'm hearing.
Right. And if you
Yeah.
set that intention, you make that choice and you go forward with it and you hit a block, like you want to be coming from love, and then you come up against something that keeps triggering you. That's when you go to work. You figure out, oh, well, I have this intention, I have this desire, I really believe in this consciously. What on the unconscious level is holding me back? And then go to work on it. Whether it's, again, like it's either a book you read or a course you take or a practitioner you choose to work with, or maybe you dance it out.
Oh, yes. That's my favorite. So, well, I keep hearing the word narcissism. I don't know why it's coming in. It must be that we need to talk about it. I'm curious what
Or maybe it's a narcissist who wants you to channel.
Something. But I think that in my work, a lot of people come to me with that word or what that means, or not what that means, but like lived experience of narcissism. Is it possible to talk a little like what your idea is on like relationships?
This is an interesting one, because I'm not I am a doctor of chiropractic. I'm not I haven't been formally trained in psychotherapy to be able to make a diagnosis. But I've had a lot of experience over time with people who have what we call a true personality disorder, a true narcissistic personality disorder, manic depression, borderline personality. I've worked with a lot of people who are in relationship with those people.
That's I think what's coming to me.
And so what you have to do is you do your own deep healing work. And you either are able to stay in relationship with that person because you are no longer triggered by them because you've done your deep healing work, or you do your deep healing work and you recognize this is very unhealthy for me to be around this toxic individual. And so you separate from that person. I've had a lot of people over the years disconnect from a family member or a relationship because it was healthy for them to do so. Not easy, but healthy. When you look at the people on this side of the story, the ones who have a true personality disorder, it's tough because to heal, there has to be an intention and a desire. And unfortunately, many of those people are so deeply locked into blaming everyone else and never self-reflecting. And somebody who isn't willing to self-reflect, it's really almost impossible to get them on a healing path. So I'm not saying it's not possible, but they would have to hit some point in their life where they recognize that they want to make a change. But if they're not going to self-reflect, they're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, I think it's coming more to me from a place of people that are in relationship with narcissism.
Right.
A lot of the time they don't even know it until they open their eyes.
Right. Until they read a list somewhere. They went online and said behavior qualities of a narcissist. And they go, oh my God, that's my mom, or that's my boyfriend. And I think if you look at the choice to be in relationship with that person, like I look at my past relationships, romantic relationships, marriage, and I say, oh, I recognize the problem, but I'm the one that chose this partner. So what is it in me that needs to be healed that led me to choose this? And that's where I go to work on myself. And if I've done the work and the other person still isn't there for the mutual healing, then I have to walk away. So I think recognition, number one, if you are in a relationship to someone with that kind of personality disorder, you have to figure out for yourself. And now if you're not safe, if you're in an unsafe situation, you've got to get out of Dodge, period. If you're unsafe, and get the support you need to get out. But if you are in a relationship and it's not dangerous and you can go to work on yourself, sometimes your healing and your shifting will allow the other person to begin to shift. So my mother always said, she was a very funny and very wise woman. And she always said, it takes two to tango, right? So every relationship is a dance. So for example, when two people come together romantically and they just fall madly in love, oh, he's so this and she's so that. And, you just see them in this like bright light of wonderfulness of all the things that are connected. We see this the same way. We feel that, that's the same way. We love the same things. But there's always an underbelly. And the underbelly is whatever is unhealed over here in this person and whatever is unhealed over here. And I guarantee those things are like hand and glove. So this one has an issue with abandonment. This one has an issue with commitment and running when as soon as things get tough. That's a match. So this one's abandonment will always get triggered by this one running. This one's running is always, connected to abandonment in the first place, right? So you have people in relationship, let's say husband and wife, just for the sake of argument. The husband opens his mouth and says, blah, 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 blah. The wife hears it, and something about the content of what he said or the tone of what he said reminds her of a stored trauma from age 6, let's say. So now a feeling of anger comes up or frustration from age 6. It comes up into this adult woman's being, and now she responds to the husband out of a 6-year-old frustration.
Right.
So the words, it looks like an adult speaking, but it's really a 6-year-old frustration energy coming through. And now that hits the husband, who now reacts to that because it brings up for him something from age 7. And now he's triggered. And now you have 2 adults who are actually triggered emotionally trying to work it out. It doesn't happen.
Right.
Now, when I was married, we got to the point where we could say we had done enough work to be able to say, we're triggered, let's separate and see if we can calm down and come back to it. But that's a very evolved place to get to. And the beauty is of relationship that all the loving stuff up here is what brings you together, but this is where the real work is.
Right.
And that's, where I think we are in the world right now. These deep places where our issues are triggering each other. And that's where the healing can take place, whether it's in a friendship with neighbors. Neighbors are a tough one.
Community.
Yeah.
Countries.
And it goes from there. It's like you throw the rock in a
family,
pond
all of it.
And onward it goes. It just keeps, blooming outward.
Yeah.
So
that's why this work is so important. In my own knowing that even just recently, I realized, like, in my experience of relationship, I kept jumping from relationship to relationship because I didn't want to go in and look at the deeper work. And I think that's what you're saying is that when we go into relationship and really sit with what starts coming up, that's what we need to be looking at.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you have a partner who's on the level with you and willing to work, willing to go to therapy together, willing to have the conversations, willing to recognize or to do this kind of work together. I love working with couples. It's so much fun because I sit in the middle. I have no judgment. I know people are triggering each other. It's like, what do I care what the issue is? It's whatever your issue is. I can't judge it.
Right.
Who am I to judge anything? Right. But I can see where everybody is pushing each other, and I can see where the generational patterns fit in, and I can see the whole picture. And it's like, okay, clear. Now we come together, and now things are going better. Here comes the next layer. And it is layers that need to be cleared. Trauma is laid down in layers, and the healing takes place in layers.
And I find that in one issue, you could have many different ways or things that are building the issue. So you have to look at all the healing is never ending is what I've come up with. I haven't come up with it. It's universal, but I've just realized like you can keep going and going and going. At one point, you gotta decide to be okay and take a break and then keep going, and just because we're healing so much. And often I find myself healing not just for myself, but for my family. Like when I heal something in me, my family feels it and they shift. 2
to tango, like my mother said. So when you're in a dance with your family, you step off the dance floor because you stop dancing that dance. Very often in a person who's not a true personality disorder, someone who's just got average neuroses like most of us, they may shift just by you shifting because you've broken the pattern. Yeah. So that's the difference between a narcissist and a borderline personality who won't even self-reflect. They're always going to point at you. But if you're with an average, unhealthy person, let's say, then your work is going to create the opportunity for that to shift. It's so beautiful to see. It's just, it's just one of those extra benefits. And what I love about this work, one of the things I love about it, of course, I'm never going to stop doing it, please, is that you never know what's going to happen. Like I worked with somebody once, I don't even remember what the issue was, but the next week she called me and she said, Oh my God, I just stood up in front of my, whatever those talking groups are, the Chamber of Commerce. I just stood up at the Chamber of Commerce in front of 100 people and I did this talk and I was so relaxed. I've never been able to stand up and speak in front of a group in my life and feel relaxed. We weren't working on that. We were working on something else, but it led to a freedom in a whole other area of her life. So you never know when you release a trauma and you delete it out of the nervous system, you never know what's possible for healing. It's so exciting.
Going back to the limitless possibilities that you're creating for so many.
That's where we started, opening doors for you, darling, doors you never dreamed existed. I mean, I'm still excited. And, when I was in chiropractic school, one of my classmates, I remember her saying to me, she came from a chiropractic family. She said, oh, once you've been in practice for 5 years, you'll be bored. And I looked at her and I said, first of all, I've never been bored a day in my life, period. But how could you be bored when every person that steps into your life, they're a world unto themselves? Every human being represents, if we decided to do nothing more than stay in this room or this house or this neighborhood and go nowhere, we would have the richness of the combined life experience and soul experience of everybody that we're in touch with here. We don't have to go anywhere. It's all there. It's so rich. Each person is like just a
universe.
World.
Yeah, a library.
So bored? Never.
No, I agree. I agree with you. That's why I travel so much, is to meet everybody in their culture and their space. But I like the idea of staying still and seeing what's around you as well. The libraries.
I remember, I don't know if you remember George Carlin, the comedian George Carlin. Well, he was out there and he's no longer alive and with us, but he said about war, I won't repeat some of what he said about war because he could be pretty crass, but he said, here's what we need to do to stop the never-ending war. He said, every person in the world needs to meet every other person in the world and shake their hand and exchange their names. Like, hi, I'm Sobyl. Who are you? Manuela. So now we've met each other. He said, and if every person in the world met every other person in the world, then when our government comes to us and says, we're going to war with those people, we're going to say, we can't. We know them. We know them. And he was, a lot of people thought he was like way on out there. But when he said that, I remember thinking, that is a deep truth. When you know someone, right, you won't go to war with them. And so how do we do that? How do we get past the trauma, get past the triggers, past the judgment, past all the powers that are trying to keep us apart and know each other? I think that's as big of if we know each other, we won't go to war with each other. We will be connected in that way. Most people don't remember that about him because he was so kind of crazy and out there. But that was a moment. I remember hearing that and thinking, right on, George. That's as core level as it gets.
That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful because then it's like when it actually affects you personally is when you really, fully step in and Wow. Sobyl, well, thank you so much. This conversation, this person, this being, like doing such deep, important work in the world. And I'm so happy that you're here with us and that you shared your story and that you shared your passion for this work.
Well, we've known each other 5 years now?
Yes,
something like
5
that.
years.
5 years
exactly
or more.
5 years.
And I've been saying, I want to be global Sobyl.
Yeah,
right?
global Sobyl here.
We all laugh about that, but it's true. I want to have this work have an impact on a global level. And so I keep looking for these collaborations and ways to bring this work into, I want to be able to, for my emotional clearinghouse, I want to have little chunks of emotional clearing, whatever, 10 or 15 minutes where people can go online and, I want to work on my anxiety, or I want to work on my, procrastination, or I want to work on my abandonment or whatever, little chunks. So in their busy lives, they can do a little bit of emotional clearing, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then of course, you and I and all these other collaborators, we want to get out there in the world in a big way and travel and, get big groups. And
that's right. We'll be offering something together.
Yes.
That will be in this podcast soon after. We'll be offering
We will be offering something together that we will create and make available, and it will be wonderful and joyous and healing and powerful, and off we go.
And clearing and releasing and creating limitless Possibility.
Limitless possibility.
Beautiful. Well,
Absolutely.
thank you so much,
Oh, honey,
Sobyl.
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, yeah. So you'll find Sobyl, everything that she does, linked below. And how do people find you? Your website?
Well, I have a website called the
Yeah.
Emotional Clearinghouse. It's just Emotional Clearinghouse, all one word, .com. And I have a phone number. I have an actual phone number.
But you don't
my
want
office phone number.
Oh, you have a phone number for your
Yes,
office. Wow.
it's 805-892-2400. I've had it for many years. It's
Wow.
my old office number. I still have it. It's still out there on a lot of
Okay.
ads and stuff. So yeah, call me, come see me, come play. Oh, and what I love now is that it used to be that I only did the work in person,
Mhm.
but I work by phone a lot, by
Yes, she
Zoom if
does.
people want the visual. But we don't
Yeah.
need it because
It's just as powerful.
it's just as powerful by phone, I discovered.
Well, I actually have only done one in-person session with you.
Right.
Everything else on
Right.
Zoom, and it's very powerful.
That started
the
about-
twin one was
yeah.
on the phone.
Yeah, the phone.
So-
And it's interesting because it's all about, as somebody's speaking about their issue, I'm listening and I'm sensing. I don't hear like some psychics hear or see things.
Mhm.
I get a sense. Somebody will say something and I go, oh, that's got a real stuck energy on it.
Mhm.
Let's look at that. And then we use the muscle testing to go forward with it to find out where it is and what it is. But all people have to do is start talking and I start listening and it just becomes really clear where the
Yeah.
block is.
Yeah.
So
Well, beautiful.
Yay,
Thank you.
honey. Thank you so much.
Thank
Love you.
you. Woo.